This past weekend, Pixar released their latest film, Elemental. So now it's time to rank all 27 Pixar movies from worst to best. And coming in at last place at number 27 is Turning Red. Probably my most divisive and controversial opinion on this channel. Look, I don't have a problem that this movie deals with mature topics like puberty and periods. What I have a problem with is it deals with these topics, and none of this was in any of the marketing. The marketing made it seem like this was going to be a movie about a girl who turns into a cute panda when she gets angry, like the Incredible Hulk, and all the marketing focused on was the panda. It conveniently left out the true content of this movie. So when a parent goes to put this movie on Disney+, all they're going to see is the cute panda, and their 6-year-old is going to be watching a movie that's way too mature for them. If this movie were rated PG-13, I'd be less harsh, but it was the deceptive marketing that ticks me off. And on top of that, the animators thought it'd be absolutely hilarious to animate an underage girl twerking. Go ahead, try defending that. Think about it. They so desperately wanted to see an underage girl twerking, they deliberately animated it and included it in the movie. Absolutely indefensible. There's also a weird out-of-place abortion reference near the end that's used as a joke. The main character is annoying and unlikable. And at the end of the day, this movie is just a ripoff of Teen Wolf. And yet, for some reason, whenever I rant about this movie, the Disney adults attack me and try to convince me about how great it is, like it's some priceless work of art that needs to be preserved. I just don't get it. Number 26, A Bug's Life. After the masterpiece that was Toy Story, this movie is a huge step down, both with its animation quality and story. The characters are ugly, the tone is cynical, and it's just a ripoff of Three Amigos. The movie is oddly mean-spirited and overall is just unpleasant. Number 25, Cars 2. Cars 1's not that great either, but this is just a weird idea for a follow-up to that. In one movie, we go from racing to James Bond with cars, and also making Mater the main character who gets annoying very quickly. It's also surprisingly dark and violent for its G rating. Scenes of gun violence in a scene where a spy car is tortured to death. And if it were humans in this situation, it would have been rated R. This movie basically just took those Mater shorts and made a whole movie out of them, and it's not good. Number 24, WALL-E. The first half of this movie is pretty good. Emotion is expressed through no dialogue, and the love story between the two robots is very cute. Then the second half happens, and it just ends up ripping off the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. The first half of this movie probably should have just been a short. Number 23, The Good Dinosaur. Personally, I blame the behind-the-scenes production problems for how this turned out. The original movie was supposed to be very different. The original idea was, what if dinosaurs never went extinct, so humans domesticated them? It was supposed to have stars like Neil Patrick Harris, but for one reason or another, the movie just wasn't working, so they completely rewrote the script and gave us something completely different. What we got was barely passable. It's basically just The Lion King with a bit of Ice Age, and while it has fantastic animation, the story is just not that interesting. Number 22, Cars. When you think about it, there's really no reason for these characters to be cars. It's not like Zootopia or movies like that, where the characters being animals helps immerse you in the world of the movie, and there's a very specific reason for it. You could easily swap out the characters to be humans, it would be pretty much the same movie. The story is fine, it just doesn't have that Pixar charm or heart for me. Number 21, Brave. A movie that is both Scottish Mulan and a ripoff of Brother Bear. So much so, it might as well be called Mother Bear. I like that Pixar tried to do a different kind of princess movie. I like the exploration of Scottish culture and the music in this movie, but the story is just so paint by numbers. Number 20, Luca. For a Pixar movie, this feels very safe and familiar. I like the character designs and how they're very different than the other Pixar films, and just like how Ratatouille transports you to Paris, this movie feels like it transports you to Italy. But unfortunately, this is another Pixar movie where the story is incredibly uninteresting. The movie revolves around the characters trying to win a bike. And that's it. There's not much conflict. It's just very bland. Number 19, Onward. A movie that, given its premise, really should have been more creative. I mean, you got Chris Pratt and Tom Holland playing brothers who live in an anachronistic fantasy setting. You could have had a lot of fun with this, but instead we get a generic, predictable road trip movie, and all the jokes just feel like ones that were done much better in movies like Shrek. Number 18, Lightyear. A movie where every character is underdeveloped and doesn't really give you enough time or information to care about them. The way the plot and characters are structured feels like they used an outline rather than a finished script, and it feels very rushed. Number 17, Elemental. Another Pixar movie that has a really cool concept with a lot of potential, but the execution of it is On a story and character level, it's very lazy and predictable and super, super heavy-handed. This is a Prejudice is Bad story, which we already did with Zootopia. But if Zootopia was too subtle for you, don't worry. This will really hammer home the point they're trying to make. Which is a shame, because the world of this movie they created is really fun. There's a lot of vibrancy, there's a lot of creativity, it's very nice visually, but even the jokes, they used all the jokes in the trailer. The problem is there's not really any complexity to these characters. They only have one trait, and even then they don't really overcome their flaw. Honestly, I think this movie would have worked better if the relationship between the two characters was platonic, because it's a forbidden love story, you got all the rom-com cliches. If the movie had gone, well, we're not necessarily compatible as a couple, but we can still be great friends, that might have worked a lot better, and it would have subverted the expectations a bit more. But instead, we just get a cliche, lazy, heavy-handed story that's going to be forgotten pretty quickly. Number 16, Finding Dory. How fitting that a movie about a character who forgets everything is itself very forgettable. It doesn't have as much heart as the original, the new characters aren't that interesting, it just feels like a cheap, lazy sequel. Number 15, Incredibles 2. One of my biggest disappointments. It took almost 15 years for this movie to come out, and instead of expanding on the ideas of the original by having the characters fight crime as a family, that all takes a back seat to essentially make an Elastigirl spin-off movie. If the film were called Elastigirl, I'd be less harsh, but it's not as interesting as the first film. Number 14, Cars 3. Now, I know that saying that this is the best of the Cars movies isn't saying much, and while in some ways it does feel like a course correction, no pun intended, of Cars 2, it serves more as a way to honor the memory of Paul Newman. It's definitely the most mature of the Cars movies, and while I do think the ending is a bit dumb, it does feel like there was genuine effort and passion put into this one. Number 13, Monsters University, a somewhat unnecessary prequel to Monsters, Inc. It's still pretty fun, it's got great new characters, but this just feels like a pilot episode of the Monsters at Work show on Disney+. Number 12, Toy Story. A movie with a simple enough story and characters that's iconic because it was the first ever film to be completely computer animated. And look where we are now. It's got mass appeal to both kids and adults, its humor and characters, and there's a reason it put Pixar on the map. Number 11, Toy Story 4. A nice way to close out Woody's story. The new characters of the film were delightful and hilarious. The movie still manages to have some complex ideas, as well as a highly emotional and satisfying ending. Number 10, Toy Story 3. A fantastic way to close out the story of Andy with a plot that goes in some unexpectedly dark directions, yet still manages to end on a delightfully bittersweet note. Number 9, Toy Story 2. The rare second entry that's better than the predecessor, dealing with themes like growing up, abandonment, and has even more heart than the original. Number 8, Finding Nemo. A movie that's definitely made more for the parents and the audience, though kids can still enjoy it. Messages about letting your kids learn from their mistakes instead of being overprotective. A main character who overcomes a disability. A fun, vibrant landscape with lots of fun characters. Sharp writing. It's got something for everyone. Number 7, Inside Out. Turning Red was an example of how to portray teenage puberty wrong. This is an example of how to do it right. It presents complex, abstract ideas and does it in a way that's age-appropriate and has a fantastic voice cast, as well as a lot of emotion. What does hold it back a bit is it is a little bit inconsistent. All the parents' emotions are the same gender as them, yet Riley has both male and female emotions, and some of the ideas like dreams being movies were already done in films like Osmosis Jones, but this is still a great film. Number 6, Ratatouille. An absolutely out-of-the-box idea about a rat who wants to be a chef. The film does a fantastic job of transporting the audience to Paris. The message of the film is very inspiring, and it's a lot funnier if you look at this movie as a metaphor for Disney's current state. What I mean by that is, Disney's mindset right now seems to be, let's not create, let's just make cheaper copies of the stuff that already exists. The guy who owned the company who believed in passion and creativity is gone, what's he going to do about it? So them mass-producing Gusto recipes as frozen foods, even if it makes no sense, like a French restaurant selling fried chicken, corn dogs, and Chinese food, you can look at that as Disney mass-producing cheap sequels and remakes. So hopefully one day we can get someone like Remy or Linguini running the show again, and we can get back to that Pixar creativity. Number 5, Monsters, Inc. A wildly creative and charming movie with a fun world to spend time in, great characters, a ton of laughs, and trademark Pixar heart. Number 4, Up. The first 15 minutes of this movie alone are emotional enough, but then the movie continues and it gets even more so. Creative idea, fantastic characters, tons of humor, and a lot of emotion. Number 3, Coco. A vibrant and colorful Pixar movie with probably their most evil villain. The culture of the film was well explored, the story is fantastic, though a bit contrived at points, and it is a film that everyone, regardless of their culture, can identify with. Number 2, The Incredibles, a fantastic throwback to the golden age of comics with well-done action, fantastic Michael Giacchino score, great family dynamic, great villain, and for years was my favorite Pixar movie. But then my number 1 pick came out and dethroned it, and that number 1 pick is Soul. If Coco explored the idea of what happens when you die, this film explores what happens before you're born. The message about finding your purpose in life is powerful and universally relatable. The rules of the film are well thought out. It's got some of the best characters in Pixar. It's an optimistic, hopeful film that the world needs right now, and it comes in at number 1. It's good to share your ranking of the Pixar movies as well as your thoughts on Elemental, and I will see you next time.